Okay. What do we do next? Probably these two. Yeah, I still don't know this, so... This is my justice. An exquisite sofa. An 85-inch TV. A high-end beige-colored wooden floor. Several bloody teeth were scattered on the ground. The morning sunlight shone through the windows and bounced off of those teeth. I was in a luxurious house that was in a gated community 20 kilometers away from the Busan police station. The house was also the home of a former colleague. Kim Jong-ho was crouched in a corner and his hands were tied behind him with rope. He hadn't slept the whole night, which left him with dark circles under his eyes. I had only given him one choice: tell the truth about what had happened 6 years ago and confess that he had been the rat. That's the Unit 3 leader, isn't he? Until he died, I promised him that I would put him through a living hell. There were many parts of a human body that could be pulled out besides the teeth. Fingernails, eyeballs, whole limbs. Compared to what my colleagues had suffered at his hands, none of those even compared. The only problem was that I might not have enough time. I heard a loudspeaker screech when someone turned it on outside. Lieutenant Kang, surrender now. You've been surrounded. We are here for you too. Let's talk about this. It was the voice of the sergeant from Unit 3. Oh, so it's not the sergeant from Unit 3, but still a guy from Unit 3. He was nothing but a useless ass-kissing pretty face. About an hour ago, the police had surrounded this house. The so-called lieutenant of Unit 3... Oh, so it was the lieutenant. So a sergeant is below a lieutenant, I assume. Lieutenant of Unit 3 rescue mission was being carried out by Unit 3 themselves. After 3 minutes of pointless negotiation, the sergeant sent in 4 of his men with assault rifles and smoke grenades, hoping to take back the hostage by force. What an idiot. 2 of those men were promptly knocked out and laid down by the wall, while the other 2 had to jump out of the window to escape. The room was a complete mess, as if it had been through an airstrike. The sofa and the floor were riddled with bullet holes. A tropical fish tank only had half a piece of glass left stuck to the frame. The exotic fish were lying on the floor and had been stepped on numerous times. They now looked vaguely like a bowl of Korean bibimbap. Of course, I was pretty sure that Lieutenant Kim wouldn't mind these minor inconveniences. I leaned my back against the wall and sat down beside him. I turned on the TV, which miraculously hadn't been hit even once. The news reporter was talking about some prison break that had happened at Hong Kong Central Prison. Tons of strange things had happened there. I remembered that it had been almost a year since Hong Kong had been hit by a huge earthquake. Since the hypocenter of the earthquake had never been located, it had become a sensational piece of news all around the world. The reporting on the earthquake had gone on for over 6 months, lasting from when it first happened until the reconstruction. Eventually, it became quite annoying. The news today seemed much more intriguing. There happened to be a name that I knew in the fugitive list. Pai, who was infamous even in the global police community. He was someone who had a unique sense of justice of his own, and he scared many perverted criminals shitless. The reporter said that Pai and his accomplice's getaway car was found at the port after their escape, which meant Pai had very likely fled to some other country. Interesting. I lit a cigarette. The sound from the TV seemed to dissipate along with the faint smoke. My thoughts drifted back to the past. I started thinking about what was later referred to as the W620 incident. 6 years ago, I had just joined Criminal Investigation Unit 2 as a rookie. I was the kind of person who would talk about justice all the time, despite having no experience whatsoever. Come to think of it, I had been exactly like Chang Yun-min. At the time, a new major had just been assigned to the Busan police precinct. To make a show of force, the new major announced an unprecedented campaign that was both bold and ambitious. It was called Operation White Bay. The goal of the operation was to clean up the violent gangs around the Busan Bay area and eliminate all of their illegal activities. If necessary, the police were given permission to shoot on sight if they felt endangered, and there would be no consequences. Back then, Busan's gangs weren't even remotely as powerful as they would become. As a result, they went through the darkest period they had ever faced. In less than 2 months, their operations had been reduced to 1/10 of their peak. W620 was the codename for the final mission during the whole operation. The mission was assigned to Criminal Investigation Unit 2, my unit. It was the night before the mission, and as a rookie cop I felt ecstatic. I kept thinking about how I could finally be a defender of justice. To make sure the mission would go perfectly and to show off in front of our beautiful lieutenant, I went to go scout the location alone without authorization. But my selfish and careless stupidity ended up exposing the plans for our entire mission. I will never forget that damp and dark room. The severed heads of my teammates were lined up on the floor in a straight line. Each of them had a different look on their face. Each of them had a stream of blood coming out from under them that had emerged into a web of death and carnage. In the end, the only ones left were me and Lieutenant Jagal. Oh, I gave up all of my pride as a police officer and a man. Crying, I held onto our enemy's legs, begging them to spare the lieutenant. But they still murdered Lieutenant Jagal in an even more gruesome way, just to mock me. Oh, so not the Jagal that we met earlier in that gay bar. The moment... Oh, that's even a woman. Huh. The moment she died, I blacked out. When I finally woke up, I was in a hospital, lying down. Some strangers in suits were standing next to my bed. Everything felt like a dream, but it wasn't. W620 became a bloody lesson for every single police officer. Operation White Bay was immediately halted. The new major was sacked and replaced by an older officer. Under the command of the old man, the official records about mission W620 contained but a single line. During a brutal conflict, the officers of Criminal Investigation Unit 2 valiantly sacrificed themselves and eliminated the remaining violent criminal members of the Musun gang. The only survivor of the incident was Officer Kang Baekya. To get the police precinct back on track as soon as possible, the old man instructed us to keep the name for Unit 2 and to set up a new unit, Unit 4, appointing me to be its lieutenant. I was in a slump for a while. I tried to avoid the old man whenever I could. I couldn't think about work, not even a little bit. Until one day I was so drunk that I passed out on the side of a road and somebody grabbed me. I was kidnapped by a strong young man. He locked me in his home, interrogated and tortured me. He wanted to know the truth about W620, the truth about all those deaths, and the truth about how I was the only one who survived. But I didn't know any more than he did. I didn't understand why I was the only one who lived either. The only thing I knew was that I wished that I had died with them, so that I wouldn't be in so much pain. The torture went from starvation to dousing me with ice-cold water to whipping me with a belt. Slowly, my consciousness started to drift away, though I don't know if it was due to hunger or pain. Eventually, I found myself standing in a small dark room. There was nothing in the room except for a dim light bulb dangling in the middle of it. I met another man in that room. He was a head shorter than me. He had very messy hair, and his eyes were filled with dangerous menace. He said his name was Yong-Gyeon. He was 6 years younger than me, and he was the one who had killed those people who had hurt us. That was the first time I met my second personality. It was quite unbelievable, but anyone that had seen Yong-Gyeon with their own eyes would not think that I had made him up. The strong young man met him and learned the truth, so he let me go. He told me that his name was Jagal Wan-Yom. He was the younger brother of Lieutenant Jagal. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Eventually, the existence of my second personality became a top secret, known only to me, Jagal Wan-Yom, the old man, and a few other trusted individuals. That was the end of that story. Still, it was extremely difficult to completely heal the pain. After Operation White Bay was abruptly terminated, the gangs eventually came back into power. Jagal Wan-Yom himself joined the Bungmun gang and became a full member. Meanwhile, I agreed to accept the old man's appointment as lieutenant for the newly formed Unit 4. I set up many special rules for my unit. For instance, the lieutenant's orders must be obeyed at all times. Also, the unit would strive for the highest level of efficiency with only the absolute minimal necessary personnel. I never considered Operation White Bay to be a mistake. It was my fault. I should not have acted on my own without authorization. I was the one who had caused the deaths of the lieutenant and everyone else. Justice wasn't something you could just talk about. Justice that couldn't be defended was no justice at all. I made a scrapbook of everything I could find about the operation, Unit 2 and Mission W620. Every once in a while I would look at the book and keep reminding myself what I had to do. For the past 6 years I had been living through the memories of my colleagues and the guilt I felt for them. Then last week, I happened to notice a tattoo on the arm of a drug dealer in the Musun gang. There was only one photo left from mission W620. I had seen that photo several times and I could remember every single detail in it. At the scene where the mission had failed, there were police, medics, bodies, the crowd. There was one person in the crowd who had his back towards the camera. He had the exact same green python tattoo on his arm, and he was talking to Lieutenant Kim. 6 years ago, Lieutenant Kim had only been part of Unit 3 for less than 2 years. Still, he was senior to me. Although he was only a junior officer, he had somehow solved a number of cold cases all by himself, which had caught the attention of the higher-ups. Soon after mission W620, during the eternal personnel change, the lieutenant of Unit 3, who had been in competition with Lieutenant J. Gull for the captain's position, was promoted to lead the entire criminal investigation department. Kim Jong-ho was naturally selected as the successor and became the new lieutenant of Unit 3. I suddenly realized that I had ignored one thing all along. Even if they had noticed me during my scouting and followed me, they could have only had some idea of our plan at best. However, the enemy seemed to know every last detail of our mission's plans. The plan had been leaked by a rat on the inside. I began to hunt for more evidence as soon as I had that breakthrough. However, Lieutenant Kim had somehow learned of my investigation as well, so he had thrown the first punch. The screeching of the loudspeaker pulled me back out of my memories. "Kang Baek-ya, are you crazy? Have you forgotten the oath you took when you were sworn in?" The old man's voice echoed outside the house. How could I have forgotten? If it weren't for that oath and my remaining faith in the people with those uniforms and badges, I wouldn't have let Kim live until now. Nevertheless, it was time for it to all finally be over. I stood up and walked up to the closed curtains. I grabbed Lieutenant Kim by his collar. Bullets hit flesh. Lieutenant Kim fell to the ground in front of the window. A sudden breeze coming through the window blew the curtains wide open. It was a perfect day for a sniper. I heard very unnatural bird chirping coming from a distance. It must be an operation signal. I put down my gun. Blood was gushing out of Lieutenant Kim's body. However, nothing happened after the signal. Perhaps they realized that whatever plan he and his men had cooked up, it was already too late. Tears were running down my face, but I didn't feel the joy of vengeance. Instead, I could feel my heart being drowned with a dreary emptiness. I suddenly saw my younger self from 6 years ago. I was at the commencement of the police academy. I gave a salute and swore my oath. "I will, to the best of my power, prevent all offences against people and property." But pests were not people. The emptiness slowly turned into exhaustion. I high-fived Yong-Yong in the dark. I walked to the corner of the dark room and sat down. I lit up a cigarette. I no longer cared about anything that happened in the outside world. I didn't regret any decisions I had made. This was my justice. Kang Baek-ya. Okay. Let me just quickly drink something. Okay. Let's see. What about this? The sniper's shot from afar destroyed Lieutenant Kim's shoulder blade. My instincts had immediately pulled Kim in front of me as a shield when the wind blew open the curtains, in case there was a sniper. Otherwise, I would have been the one that got hit. The bird chirping must have been a signal for the shot. I pulled Kim up off of the floor. When I grabbed his shoulder, I intentionally stuck my right hand into his wound. He let out a scream of pain. "Keep screaming, you'd better let everyone out there hear you." The sniper vanished almost instantaneously. There was complete chaos on the ground. It seemed like the old man had not ordered the shot. It must be the stupid pretty face again. The loudspeaker buzzed again. "I promise you I will personally supervise the investigation of the case of Min Jun. You won't be detained and you can be part of the team until we uncover the truth. Trust me, Lieutenant Kang." I could hear how sincere the old man was just from his voice. It reminded me of the time when he had handed me the appointment letter. If I had a little more time to find definitive evidence to convict Kim, Lieutenant Jagal would have wanted that too, right? I sat down by the wall next to Kim, waiting for the old man to send his people in. I was exhausted. A few minutes later, a 5-person team entered the house. Strangely, they were all wearing bulletproof vests. One of them untied Kim's hands and feet. I stood up on my own, but they didn't try to take me in. Instead, 5 guns were shoved in my face, point blank. I took another look. All of them were from Unit 3. It wasn't the old man's fault. It was me who had been too trusting. 5 fingers touched their triggers simultaneously. They pulled a little and a little more. The pins hit the bullets. The bullets flew out of the barrels with swirling airflows at their tails. They were flying towards me. In the end, I didn't have enough time. For 6 years, I hadn't realized that the enemy had been right by my side. And I couldn't find evidence against him either. I hate myself. I hate my useless self. So, I'm assuming this needs to come later. We need Chang Yon-min at his side. But I can sort of feel my voice, being a bit exhausted. So I'm gonna end my recording session here. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.